Hey y'all, this is Kobe R. Rice, and I'm back again for another, well, not even for another, to finish out what I was supposed to do yesterday. So I went live yesterday evening for the next installment of our Cozy Creator write-in, our daily write-ins. And I was testing out some tech. And all of a sudden, I felt like this overwhelming, I don't know what it was. I felt like super sick. So I thought it was just going to be temporary. But apparently, it was not. And I needed to just like turn in for the night. So I apologize for anybody who might have been tuning in. I think maybe there were like one or two people who were tuned in yesterday. And yeah, the truth is that I am really, really tired. Just just a whole bunch of things. Obviously, like things that have been happening in the United States, and just trying to make sure that like everything is staying on an even keel around me with my family. And then I have like the most of you work, and then this on top of it, and then writing is a lot of stuff going on. So I really had to kind of, I guess, step back and take care of myself because my body was like, nah, sis. But I don't want to spend too much time talking. I want to make sure that I make this up to you guys and jump right into the lesson for today and hopefully get some writing done at the same time. So, for the second time, we are going to be talking about the four act structure, but specifically, we're talking today about acts 2B and 3, because we already went over and discussed act 1 and act 2A. So, I'm not going to go through this again, but just a quick 30-second touch point. According to Pilar Alessandra, she has aptly named the first two acts in a four-act structure the trauma and the training, and we talked about why. These points under each part of the story, under Act 1 and Act 2A, these are the things that you need to focus on or that you should focus on, right? I'm not going to tell you what to do when you're trying to develop Act 1 and Act 2A, respectively. And then you also, for each specific act, you want to focus on moments to develop. Specifically for Act 1, the two most important moments in Act 1, in my opinion, are the inciting incident and the first point of no return. The second, for Act 2A, the most important moments to develop will be the midpoint, which is like the highest point, the happiest point, the most fun point, or like just the best moment your character's going to have in this whole story before everything goes downhill, right? And usually that also includes some kind of progress made between the character and their mentor, or the main character and their love interest, or both, right? So, and this is actually also where the character feels the most safe, and they are still very firmly in like the new world, but not quite thrust into enemy territory. You're going to develop that, and you're also going to develop information reveals, right? So again, that's the critical information that the character gets, and you're going to also make sure that we know as readers how this new information raises the stakes, because those information reveals for Act 2A are definitely going to play a huge role when it comes to those things paying off in Acts 2B and in Acts 3. All right. So I talked in I gave you an example about the Matrix and how two information reveals in the Matrix in Act 2A are: number one, you can die in if you die in the Matrix, your body will die in real life, and number two, in the real world, there are dangerous robots called squiddies that can kill human beings, right? So nowhere is safe, and both of these facts really come to bear and really bear down on the main character and the other supporting characters as we get on to Act 2B and Act 3. In Aliens, okay, we get sort of reveals and hints about the alien and what they do, and like how they're moving. Specifically, I'm thinking about the sequel, Aliens. Great franchise, one of my favorite sci-fi franchises of all time. Um, one big information reveal or hint or plant, I like to call them plants and payoffs. One major plant in Act 2A of Aliens is that apparently they have deduced that there is some kind of nest that is creating these alien creatures, and that there might be an alien queen who is responsible for laying these eggs, because they're trying to figure out where the face huggers are coming from. And they see that the face huggers are coming out of eggs, out of clutches of eggs. And so they're just like, who or what is laying these eggs? So we already get the foreshadowing for the reveal that there's going to be some big major boss at the end of the Aliens franchise. And of course, that comes to play with us and to bear down on the main character in a massive way, right? When she has to retrieve Newt from the alien queen, okay? And the queen is a badass, all right? Love it. Again, and you know what I really want to do is after this entire series is over, probably at the top of 2025, I want to do a full-on like breakdown, like a 30-point breakdown of like my favorite action franchises, my favorite sci-fi franchises, to see like how well they fit this plot structure that I'm teaching you guys. And spoiler alert, they fit it pretty well. And that's the reason why I am so sold on the 4-act structure and the other structures I'll be teaching you, because in some of the best, most impactful, most successful cinematic franchises, cinematic stories, they use this structure. But you're going to see how the structure itself is solid. And it's not that it's unchangeable, but it's pretty like, um, how do you say? I don't want to say rigid. That's not the right word. I guess I'll just say structured. It's pretty structured, but it doesn't mean that it has to determine the uniqueness of your story. The Matrix and Alien and Aliens are two totally different stories, but they follow a very similar structure, right? So I don't want you to feel like you're imprisoned by the structure itself. All right, so that was my little intro. Let's jump forward. We're going to actually jump into Act 2B and 3 today. And as I'm moving forward, do not forget that Colby's Cozy Cafe is open. And actually, you know what? Hold on. Let me just remind you guys and show you guys what's on offer today, in case that's why you're here, and that's fine. Do not forget that this week we launched 2 new book giveaways. Actually, one is a book giveaway that's free. That's the Into the Future giveaway. And the second is a book sale. And the first 3 books in my series, my dystopian series, The Books of Ezekiel, is on sale in the American Apocalypse book sale. Oh, excuse me. Okay. So Into the Future is all about cyberpunk futurist stories and books that are free. And American Apocalypse obviously is about dystopian apocalyptic stories, post-apocalyptic stories, and they are on sale. We have our 2 also giveaways still open, and you can earn at least 100 more entries this week if you go back to your giveaway link or just click the link in the description, whichever giveaway you entered, and then complete the activities that are in the that are on the giveaway page once you click through the link. Okay. And then I just want to remind you guys, honestly, if you're not going to get any other book throughout this entire month-long sort of class, The Coffee Break Screenwriter and Save the Cat, probably the 2 most solid, really foundational plotting books that you could ever get. And I want to remind you again, before we go back to the actual lesson, that you don't necessarily have to don't assume that just because this is about screenwriting that you cannot apply this to writing novels. I write novels that I like to call like cinematic novels, right? So novels that read cinematically, that follow a lot of screenwriting principles, but are just in prose format. All right. Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games, at least the first book. The second book, in my opinion, not so much. The third book, more so. But definitely her first book, that is absolutely a cinematic novel, because she uses a kind of screenwriting, plotting structure, but it also moves very quickly. The cliffhangers are cliffhanging, okay? And she also just knows how to show rather than tell. Okay, so she takes all of the best aspects of screenwriting and applies it to novel writing. And maybe we'll do like a Hunger Games read along and like a diagnostic or something too. That would be really cool if we could do that. Okay, anyway, let's get back to the lesson at hand. And I really just want to spend about 10 minutes here so we can have at least 20 minutes writing. All right, so The second two parts of the four act structure are acts 2B and 3. Now, as you can see here, from again, and I'm borrowing these terms from Pilar Alessandra, again, Coffee Break screenwriter, which I just showed you on the other page. She calls Act 2B the trials, and she calls Act 3 the triumph. All right, so let's deal with Act 2B first. You guys will maybe remember when we did the beginning, middle, end exercise. I described for you what should go in the beginning, all that should go in the middle, and then all that should go in the end. The Act 2B is the second half of the middle, right? And just like what I described for you guys for the BME challenge, the BME exercise, I added those same points here, right? So in Act 2B, you want to describe all the new challenges and hardships that the character faces, okay? You also want to introduce the social triggers that force the character to face their critical history or traumas, and you want to show the character failing at resolving this critical history. Okay, that's really important. So not only are you like this is when you're throwing all of the um, challenges, the hardships, the conflict, that external conflict. It's on and popping now. Okay, the villain is throwing new curveballs at the characters, and they have to fight back in this moment or in this section. The character is also because they're being tested by these external challenges and these external triggers. They are forced to face who they are. They're forced to face their flaws and their traumas, right? And they're going to maybe acknowledge them, try to face them, but they're going to fail. Okay. And if you recall from our character arc discussion, I asked you guys to make a list of all of the first 7 critical history traits. I asked you to make a list of critical history traits antonyms, like the opposite of those traits. And then I asked you to build a bridge between the two, right? Where there's a moment where the character acknowledges their trauma or that trait, but they choose to ignore it. Then there's a moment where the character tries to face their trauma or traits, but they fail at resolving it. And then the final part of their character arc is them facing their trauma or their traits and actually succeeding. Okay. So at minimum, you're going to have those 3 different instances, those 3 opportunities for the character to fix the flaw, and those 3 different outcomes. And when we talk about what you should be doing with the character's traits and flaws in Act 2B, this is definitely the part where they are trying to face their trauma or they're forced to face it, but they fail at resolving it. Okay. They're not ignoring it per se, but they fail at resolving it. So that's really important. Make sure that you include those moments in your Act 2B. All right. This is also where we see friction between the mentor and or the love interest, and or those relationships are going to intensify through clear moments, right? So there should be clear push and pull moments between the main character and the mentor, and there should be push and pull moments between the main character and the love interest if there is one. Okay. This is really where those relationships are being tested, and the relationships between the MC and mentor and MC and love interest are being strengthened through trials, right? Through trials by try by fire, try by combat. Okay. Maybe the main character does something or like faces a fight and can barely beat back the villain or barely beat back an enemy, and the love interest has to come and help them and save them. Is that going to positively impact their relationship or negatively impact their relationship, right? And you can even branch out from there even further. Maybe the love interest starts to see the main character a little bit differently in a positive light because she saw or he saw them being cowardly in the beginning, and this time they're not being so cowardly, even though they fail, but they're not being so cowardly. And that's what impresses the love interest. Or The love interest always thought that the main character was trash. And the main character steps up to the plate a little bit or tries, fails, and now the love interest thinks that the main character is even trashier. Like you really aren't the one. Like you really are not that dude. And that causes friction, right? So this is an opportunity for you to really play around with the ups and downs, the back and forth, the push and pull of both of these types of relationships. But there should be some friction. And once again, because you made a whole comprehensive list already, right? You did that already? Okay, just checking. You made a whole comprehensive list of the macro social triggers, the mesosocial triggers, and then the micro social triggers. You should have a whole lot to choose from when you're trying to figure out which triggers and events actually test these relationships. Okay? All right. And most importantly and most excitingly, in Act 2B, you have the biggest set pieces and what I call the OD overtures. So the big set pieces are like the really sexy car chases, swerving this way and that or whatever. Or like a massive gunfight, like, thinking about John Wick, right? Some of the biggest set pieces are really him just like blasting his way and flipping his way and punching his way through certain obstacles and people, right? Any major like aerial battles or like starship battles, if you're in like a space opera, like this is really the place where you let what Blake Snyder would call the promise of the premise really shine through, but in a more high stakes, tense way, right? So if you're promising somebody like, or not somebody, but if you're promising your audience a sprawling, epic, gorgeous fantasy world filled with, for example, dragons, night walkers, ice kings, night walkers, or what have you. Like some of the major set pieces better be fights with dragons and better be massive, epic battles with these, night walker zombies, right? This is really when like the poster is that of your novel or of your series comes to life. All right, the things that you're really excited to the things that happen that you're really excited to write about. Okay. OD overtures. I don't know why I put it in there. I was trying to find a word that described how I felt about like really massive gestures. I put overtures in the sense of like, for example, if you're writing like a romance or a fantasy romance, I feel like Act 2B is really where the overtures, like the big, massive leaps, the shows of affection, in Beauty and the Beast, for example, in Beauty and the Beast, when she and the Beast are kind of finally like turning a corner, one of the biggest overtures in that movie that all of us remember was when he gave her an entire library. Right? I mean, it was a great scene. The library was gorgeous. The space was huge and amazing. And it meant a lot to Belle because that is her ultimate favorite thing to do. And he showed that he was really like into her, that he was listening to her, and that he was catering to what she truly loved and what she's passionate about. That was a major turning point in that love story, at least in the Disney love story. Okay. So those are the types of overtures that I'm talking about, like those shows of affection, the shows of loyalty, the shows of allegiance, things of that nature. Okay. Let me actually, sorry, I put this on Do Not Disturb. I have people trying to literally disturb my peace right now, and I'm not doing that. Anyway, so and this is also FYI, like I said before, especially if you're doing a romance, this is kind of where, in addition to all these overtures, like the conflict comes in, right? In Jane Eyre, it was Bertha, you know what I'm saying? Big Bertha, who was being shut away in like, I don't know, the attic or the West Wing or whatever, who was his wife who had kind of gone mad, not kind of, but had gone mad. Jane done found out that old dude was already married. He's out here trying to marry her and everything like that, and he already has a wife. Oh snap! What? What are you talking about? that's like one of the best books ever written. I'm not the biggest. I do like classical literature. It's not like the number one thing that I go to because I'm very picky about classical literature. Like I don't like Dickens. He goes on for way too long, but some Charlotte Bronte, I can get down with some Charlotte Bronte. Okay. Charlie Bronte and I are cool. But in that book, Jane Eyre, um, that was like a big part, a big turning point in Act 2B, a major trial. And Jane was like, oh, you had me effed up, sir. Bye. Which was actually very revolutionary for a woman in that day and age. But that's what I mean when I say overtures. Like, because if you're writing a romance or a fantasy romance or sci-fi romance, you might have some like big action set pieces or some, epic fight scenes or whatever, but you're going to be leaning more into the emotional connection and the emotional, um, the ways in which like emotions manifest between the two characters is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Okay, I'm rambling. I know I ramble, but I get really excited about this stuff. Okay, so the big moments develop in Act 2B. Number one, the crisis moment. Okay, so nobody talks about this, not even Blake Snyder, which is great because then that allows me to contribute something to the field, right? We talk about the midpoint being like the highest point in the series or the story or what have you, and then when they talk about the next major plot points develop, they say, "Oh, we need a second culmination, or what I call the second point of no return," right? But we skip over a critical moment, which I call the crisis moment, right? So everything is all good in the hood at the midpoint, at the end of Act 2A. But then how do we get from the highest points all the way to the all is lost point? We don't just go from the highest point all the way down to hell, right? There has to be another moment in between. I call this the crisis moment. Right after the midpoint is great, and the hero has kissed the main character, or sorry, the hero has kissed the love interest, or the hero has bonded with the mentor, or after the hero overcomes a major training or something like that. Like everything is all good, but then there is something that is very clear and dark and horrible that happens right after that takes us from Act 2A to Act 2B. And I call that the crisis moment. Okay. So, how I define the crisis moment is this: what major action does the villain take to destroy the MC's temporary peace? How do they, meaning the villain, gain the upper hand? Okay. So, as everything in the main character's world feels relatively safe, something happens. The story progresses in a logical way, but like it moves the character from safety to danger, or the villain pulls up. Right? The villain pulls up. And I like to think of this in terms of territories. This is actually something that I do want to contribute to the field, right? When you're talking about the 4 act structure, you're also talking about 4 territories, right? Four types of turf. In Act 1, we're firmly on the main character's turf. His world, his crappy world, his sucky world. He's in this kind of like status quo that he can't break out of, but we're clearly in the character's world, right? Then when we break into Act 2A, we move into a new world, a new turf, but it's not a turf that's quite dominated by the villain. There's a safe space, there's a place of peace. We're essentially on the allied turf in Act 2A, usually, right? And we can see some external dangers or dangers kind of biting at the walls of the allies. You know what I'm saying? We know it's not completely safe, but for now we can breathe, we can rest, we can say, ooh, like this is how the Matrix works. Look at me. I know Kung Fu, all of that. Right? That's Act 2A. We're firmly in the Allies world. Act 2B is when the Allies' turf is finally invaded. Like the villain pulls up and they start just going off, popping off, shooting, killing, robbing, stealing, destroying. Like the villain has officially infiltrated the Allies' turf, right? And when I say allies, I mean the allies to the main character. Okay. Or in Act 2B, there is a neutral turf wherein you have multiple conflicting parties or parties with conflicting interests, and battle erupts. So at that point, the neutral turf is no longer neutral, and whoever wins the battle, that turf is going to belong to them. So I say this, the Matrix doesn't quite fit this, but in Act 2B, essentially, they've just come from the Oracle. That was Act 2A. They're trying to get back from the Matrix to the Nebuchadnezzar, right, to the real world. They're in the Matrix, which, is owned by the machines, but they're in a place of safety still to a certain degree because nobody knows that they've hacked back into the Matrix, even though it's owned by the machines, right? But something happens, which is somebody on the team betrays the team, right? And the machines, they know that Neo and crew have hacked back in, that these are free humans, that these humans are not controlled by the Matrix, and now they are closing in on them and trying to kill them before they can escape back to the real world. All right, that is a moment where neutral territory, sort of, or semi-neutral territory, is now turned into a war zone, right? The villain has now infiltrated the safe space. So just to kind of recap, Act 1, turf-wise, is all about the main character's turf. Act 2A is all about the allies to the main character's turf. It's not the main character's turf, it's the allies' turf. Act 2B is about the allies' turf getting infiltrated or getting invaded, or neutral turf getting completely messed up and and blown to smithereens, so to speak, because there are all these kind of conflicts and clashes, right? So, but it is really about the breach of the allies' turf by the villain. That is what Act 2B is about. And so that's what the crisis moment represents. It is the moment at which the villain breaches the allied territory. It's about that moment that the villain takes to destroy the main character's temporary peace and safety. And in this moment, the villain, of course, because they move like a villain, their attack is unexpected, and usually they end up gaining the upper hand. At least in a good story, they do. That brings us to the second point of no return, which is the moment that the main character has to move from this infiltrated territory into the villain's territory to finish a fight or reclaim something, right? Now, mind you, like, there's like another moment, so there's a couple moments in between the crisis moment and the second point of no return. Blake Snyder goes into those plot points, and we're gonna talk about those starting tonight, actually. But for now, the main moments you want to think about for Act 2B, just two, are the crisis moment and the second point of no return. Then finally, in Act 3, we have the triumph. And as I mentioned just now, when we talk about turf, the turf in Act 3 is firmly the villain's turf. I'm not saying you can't write a good story on the Allies' turf, but the Allies' turf at this point usually has been completely destroyed. And the stakes get raised even more when the main character basically has to go into uncharted territory, dangerous territory, deadly territory to finish off the villain. Because that's really where all the odds are against the main character. The stakes are completely raised and like at 1,000%. And it's basically do or die. And I haven't seen a movie yet, and check me if I'm wrong in the comments. Have you seen a movie in Act 3 where the main character has not had to go to the villain's turf in any capacity? I'm trying to think, and I really can't. I'll keep meditating on that. I think that my formula is right, though. Specifically, I'm thinking about whatchamacallit, The Matrix, right? Pretty much everywhere is the villain's turf. Let's just be real. But when Neo chooses to face Mr. Smith inside of the Matrix where everything is against him, actually even before then, when Neo and Trinity choose to go and save Morpheus and rescue him from the Matrix. And they move from the real world back to the Matrix, which is firmly in the villain's world. That is certainly them going into enemy territory. Okay. The Lord of the Rings, all of those movies are especially the last one. If you're thinking about the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, and then the final movie in that trilogy, the Return of the King. Frodo has to literally go into the heart of evil in order to destroy the ring. So this is where, as I mentioned here in these columns here, you're going to describe the final battle between the main character and the villain, right? So that's your external conflict. It's going to be like you're going to face all the conflicts here, but specifically if there is a man versus man or individual versus individual conflict, the main character is going to butt up against the villain. You're also going to then describe, so that's the external conflict. You're going to describe the final struggle between the MC and himself, the main character and himself. That is the internal conflict. So they are not only facing the external conflicts in this act, but they're also facing the internal conflicts in this act. And in that, I ask myself, what parts of the critical history have the MC conquered and what part remains, right? So in in Act 2B, we already had the character facing parts of their critical history and failing at resolving them or failing at resolving some of them. What parts of that critical history or the main core aspect of the critical history remains? What do they have to conquer, right? Those are essentially the two things that you are fleshing out in this section. We'll get to the third point in a second. The major moments to develop in your Act 3 are the third act twist and the resolution. So you have the final battle between the main character and the villain. The main character in the third act twist, the main character seems to be making good progress, but the villain has other plans in mind. I did not coin this. This is Blake Snyder. This is why his book is so famous, and he was so famous because he really helped to break down the essential structure of great cinematic storytelling, and he is not wrong about this at all. There is always some kind of aha moment on the villain's end or haha moment that really throws the main character off their game. I'm thinking about Aliens, the second one, where Ripley and the robot and Newt thought they were escaping. And then suddenly we find out that the queen actually attached herself to the escape pod. And now Ripley got to go head to head with the queen with no weapons. That's a huge third act twist if I've ever seen or heard one. And that's why that scene is so epic. And that's why the movie is perfect. Okay. Again, you can tell how much I love that movie. Okay. So we think that they've gotten away. And the queen was like, psych, you tried it. No. Okay. So they have the battle. Hopefully, obviously, the MC is victorious in that battle. And then the resolution is where you describe that moment. What is the moment that the MC wins? What is the moment that they win the battle with the external and the internal evils? Okay. Okay. For the Aliens franchise, we know the MC has officially won when when Ripley goes back to old habits, and just like she did in the first movie, for this movie she blows the queen out of the airlock, because that's really unless you have like some serious weapons and something that can neutralize the acid that comes out of them when you shoot them, that's really the safest way apparently to get rid of these aliens. So that's what she does. She has a resolution. That's how she resolves the conflict. And then after you have that moment, you want to describe what that new world is after the evil is defeated. And when I say evil, I don't mean the external evil, the external enemy, the external villain. I also mean the internal evil, flaws, trauma, right? Because at this point, they have really come to a conclusion or an epiphany that allows them to overcome their flaw and overcome their weakness to defeat the villain. So this is the moment where we start to think about, okay, now that evil is gone, life is peaceful again. The sun is up again. We can walk freely and sleep in peace again. But then also internally, the character has healed that wound. and we see their new life now that they've healed that wound. Thinking about Joel from The Last of Us, right, with Ellie. He essentially defeats the evil, I guess, the external evil of the Fireflies, which will cost him later. But for now, they're safe and they have a safe place to go. They're going back to Wyoming with Joel's brother and the nice little setup they've got going on over there. You know what I'm saying? And that evil has been defeated. The world is nice. Actually, even as they're traveling back, we see that it's springtime because the whole um, video game, we've been going through seasons, right? And the hardest season for them obviously was that winter season. But then by the time the entire game is over, it's spring. Things are actually blooming. The world looks beautiful. Obviously, the cordyceps monsters are still out there, but like the actual season itself represents renewal. I didn't miss that, Naughty Dog Games. Okay, I didn't miss that. I peeped it because I'm a storyteller. But that's the external world. And internally, Joel is now officially, like, I wouldn't say completely healed because you never really heal from, um, losing a child, but he has definitely overcome his fear of vulnerability. He's definitely gotten attached to Ellie. He loves Ellie like she is his new daughter. And he has shown that he will protect her no matter what. And he's very, like, he's been moved from that cold, hard place into a warmer, more pleasant, but also just like more at peace place, right? She is definitely filling a void that he had for a long time. And so there's a lot of healing in that moment. Okay, I talked a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I feel like I was talking a lot of sense today. I hope that you guys got a lot out of it. Again, do not forget that we have our Cozy Cafe open with books for download and for purchase and free giveaways. And I've been wanting to really give away some more stuff, but I don't see many people here. So it's like, hey, it is what it is. I'm not mad. Maybe next time. But for those of you who are here, take the next couple of minutes to maybe screenshot these prompts because I do have to start winding down and signing off for work. But if you want to work on Acts 2B and Act 3 today, take a screenshot, take some time to work on it. And I'm going to come back hopefully a little bit later in the evening and actually give the lesson I was supposed to give for today, lesson 13, which is the 8 plot points and talking you through how to develop the first plot point of your story. All right, y'all, I'm about to sign off. Have a great day. Happy writing. Keep showing up, keep creating, and I will see you guys tonight. Bye.